All right, I think we'll get this started. Sean will be here momentarily. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is not an item, though? Oh, yeah. So the first order of business would be to review, this is a budget workshop evening. So we have a citizens' comments item on the agenda that's not related to the budget. If there's any, Kate, could you check to see if the clipboard has anybody written down by the door? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Nothing? Very good. The next item on the agenda would be additions and adjustments to the agenda by board or superintendent. There is a note that there will be additional retirements and resignations need to be added. So we're going to add those as items 6, after 6, after the workshop, and before executive session. We're going to add those. So it'd be 6A and 6B, even though they're not related. But that's where we do that. And Karen, did you have anything else that you would add or change?
So just that those, the retirement is for Manchester Elementary School Principal Abby Hartford, and the resignation is Marina Cook High School mathematics teacher Tanya Hunt.
Very good. Noted on the agenda for Chair Roddick.
All right.
Off you go.
Thank you. So we're additions, adjustments.
Yep, and we have announced those. So we're on to budget workshop.
Okay, budget workshop.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. This is the update for the FY27 second draft budget. Tonight, we will walk you through the budget, which totals close to $24.4 million, a net reduction of $612,000 from the first draft we presented on January 21st. We will cover the reconciliation from first to second draft, the warrant article comparison, the ED 279 and revenue side of the budget, the impact on each of our 4 towns, the fund balance, staffing changes, and several specific budget adjustments. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Here are the key numbers for tonight's discussion. The second draft budget has come in at almost $24.4 million. That's a net reduction of about $612,000 from the first draft we presented on January 21st, which was over $24.9 million. Compared to the current year, FY26, the second draft represents an increase 2.89%. That's down from the 5.5% increase in the first draft. On the revenue side, the ED 279 delivered a significant blow. State EPS funding dropped about $679,000, an 11% reduction. That shift pushed an additional $665,000 in required local contribution to our 4 towns. The total local impact across all 4 towns is an increase of about $1.1 million, or 6.75%. This is the challenge we're navigating. The state is contributing less while costs continue to rise, and the difference falls to local property taxpayers.
This table walks you through every adjustment from the first draft to the second draft. We started at over $24.9 million. The Budget Committee directed us to bring this number down significantly following the February 4th presentation on the ED 279. Starting at the top, we reduced the CATC cost sharing by nearly $24,000 as their state subsidy came in higher than expected. We eliminated 5 positions through attrition and unfilled vacancies: an elementary guidance counselor, a middle school world language teacher, an elementary classroom teacher, an elementary principal, and a high school math teacher. We reduced the bus purchase from 2 to 1, saving $30,000. We removed the maintenance garage at $140,000. We eliminated an unfilled high school special education position. We eliminated 1 middle school floating teacher through a reduction in force. On the additions side, we had to increase our health insurance projection from 10% to 15%. which added just over $133,000. The SRO increased by $5,000 based on an updated salary schedule from the Kennebec County Sheriff's Office. We added back CATC at a reduced level and restored summer school programming at just under $52,000. The net result, a reduction of $611,591 from the first draft. This table gives you the full picture. FY26 adopted the first draft and the second draft side by side with the change between drafts and the year-over-year comparison. The three largest reductions from first to second draft were in regular instruction at $279,000, operations and maintenance at $123,000, and school administration at $94,000. Looking at the year-over-year column, two articles account for most of the increase. Special education is up 8.9%, driven by student needs we are legally required to meet. Operations and maintenance is up 10%, driven by utility costs and deferred maintenance. On the positive side, regular instruction actually decreased just over 1%, and school administration decreased 4.9%, reflecting the staffing reductions we'll discuss in a few slides. The overall increase from FY26 to the second draft is $684,408, or 2.89%. This is the slide that tells the story of why local taxes are going up, even though our budget increase is moderate. On the left, state EPS funding dropped almost $679,000, an 11% reduction. That's because our property valuations went up 16.4% across the district. Under Maine's funding formula, when property values go up, the state says you can afford more, so we'll give you less. It's that simple. On the right, that $679,000 the state took away has to come from somewhere. The required local dollar match increased $665,241, or 7.68%. This is entirely formula-driven. We have no control over this number. The mill expectation actually went down from 6.1 to 5.645, but when you multiply a lower rate by much higher valuations, you still get a bigger number. The key message for our community: this is not a spending problem. This is a state funding formula shift happening to districts across Maine due to rising property values. This is the full revenue picture. At the top, state funding is down across the board. The EPS allocation dropped just over $672,000. The Educational Service Center adjustment dropped another $6,600. In other revenues, the bright spot is Fayette tuition, which increased $65,000 to $940K. We currently have approximately 67 Fayette students in grades 6 through 12. Miscellaneous revenue is up $56K, largely from state agency reimbursements for foster children in special education and interest income. The balance forward increased $200K from $700,000 to $900,000. This is important. Every dollar of carry forward directly reduces what we need to raise through property taxes. At the bottom, property tax revenue must increase by almost $1.1 million. The required local match is up over $665K. That's the state formula. The additional local dollars are up over $400,000. That's driven by our expenditure budget increase. The total revenue budget matches the expenditure budget at $24,363,273. Here's how the budget impacts each of our four towns. Manchester sees a 5.6% increase, just over $274,000, bringing their total contribution to almost $5.2 million. With 342 students, that's just over $15,000 per student. Mount Vernon has the largest percentage increase at 10.6%, almost $379,000. This is driven by the fact that Mount Vernon's 3-year average property valuation increased 21.5%, the highest of the four towns. That dramatic valuation increase means the state formula shifts more costs to Mount Vernon. Their total is over $3.9 million, with 215 students, $18.3K per student. Reedfield sees the most moderate increase at 5.4%, about $240K to $4.7 million. With 352 students, they're at 13.3K per student, the lowest per student cost of the 4 towns. Wayne increases 6%, about $174,000, to just over $3 million. Despite having the fewest students at 1 in 45, Wayne has the highest per student cost at just over $21K, reflecting its lower enrollment relative to its property valuation. For context, last year the district-wide increase was 2.9%. This second draft budget is at 6.75%, more than double. That difference is almost entirely driven by the ED 279 funding shift. This is an important slide because there is sometimes a misunderstanding in the community about the fund balance. The total fund balance is $2.9 million. That number may look like we're sitting on a pile of money. We are not. Nearly 70%, or just over $2 million, is already assigned to specific board-approved purposes. The FY26 carry forward of just under $800,000 was already applied to reduce this year's taxes. The proposed FY27 carry forward of over $900,000 is in this budget to reduce next year's taxes. The capital reserve of $400,000 and the special education reserve of $75,000 are designated funds. What's actually unassigned and discretionary? Just over $700,000. That's 3% of the proposed budget, well below the 9% statutory threshold under Maine law. Designated reserves like capital and special education do not count against that 9% cap. The carry forward in this budget is $200,000 more than last year, and every dollar of it reduces what our towns need to raise through property taxes. Without the carry forward, the local impact would be nearly $1 million higher.
We have 12 positions to address, 8 retirements or resignations, and 4 currently unfilled. Of these 12, we recommend eliminating 5 through attrition, resulting in savings of $435,766. The positions being eliminated are the elementary principal going from 4 to 3, a high school math teacher going from 5 to 4, an elementary counselor going from 6 district-wide to 5, an unfilled high school special education teacher going from 12 district-wide to 11, and an unfilled middle school world language teacher going from 6 world language teachers in grades 6 through 12 to 5. Declining enrollment over time affords these reductions. We are right-sizing to match the students we have. The remaining positions, including the middle school team teacher, middle school literacy specialist, support staff positions, middle school assistant principal, and assistant superintendent, are essential to maintaining our instructional programs and operations, and we recommend filling them. Additionally, we have an unfilled ESOL teacher position. However, our multilingual learner population is currently higher than it has been in recent years. We are required to staff this position in accordance with state and federal regulations. In addition to the 5 positions being eliminated through attrition, 3 positions may require a formal reduction in force. 1 middle school floating teacher, bringing them from 13 to 12 team teachers, and 2 elementary teachers, bringing the number of elementary classroom teachers from 36 to 34. The total savings are over $174K. I want to be very clear about something. A reduction in force eliminates a position. It does not necessarily mean the loss of a valued staff member. We currently have several open positions across the district, and the administrative team is committed to making every effort to place affected employees into available roles that match their certification, skills, and experience. Our goal is to retain these talented professionals. We recognize the uncertainty this creates and want our staff to know that their contributions matter and that we will work diligently to find a path forward for each affected individual. If necessary, the process will be conducted in full compliance with Maine Revised Statutes Title 20A and our collective bargaining agreements, including proper notification timelines and coordination with the Maranacook Education Association on seniority and recall provisions. Here are the 6 key adjustments between the first and second drafts. Cat C was reduced significantly. This reflects the Cat C's updated ED 279 state allocation and maintains our district's participation in the Career and Technical Education Program. Summer school was eliminated in the first draft. We're recommending a reduced, more focused approach to restore it, targeting the highest need students, elementary intervention, middle school math, and high school credit recovery. This is a responsible investment in student outcomes. The bus fleet was reduced from 2 new buses to 1. Our 19-bus fleet is sufficient for operations, but we will need to invest in a new bus annually at a minimum. The maintenance garage was removed entirely. We've deferred it to reduce the local impact. Health insurance is another area that went up. Anthem's projected increase went from 10% to 15%. We believe it's prudent to budget at the higher rate to avoid a later increase. The SRO increased by $5,000 based on an updated salary schedule we received from the Kennebec County Sheriff's Office. Before we wrap up, we want to provide some broader context for the budget decisions you've seen tonight. The staffing reductions, the position eliminations, the cost containment, these are not arbitrary cuts. They are a direct response to 3 converging realities: declining enrollment, aging facilities, and a structural shift in how the state funds our district. Taken individually, any one of these would warrant careful examination. Taken together, they compel us to act responsibly and to act now. On March 11th, the administrative team will present a plan to the board, a comprehensive 1-year action plan for district strategic planning with pathways forward that address the full scope of these realities. These are the 3 converging realities. First, declining enrollment. Elementary enrollment has fallen 24%, from 580 to 439 students over 8 years. The pre-K and kindergarten pipeline, which historically ran in the 140s and 150s, now stands at just 91. That is the smallest incoming cohort since the district began offering pre-K in 2005. We lost 46 students in the most recent year alone. Second, aging facilities. We operate 4 elementary buildings, each with its own heating system, roof, electrical infrastructure, plumbing, and custodial needs. These maintenance demands do not decline with enrollment. Deferred maintenance compounds every year. Third, a structural shift in funding. You saw this tonight in the ED 279. The state is contributing less while costs continue to rise. This is not a 1-year challenge. It is a persistent trend that places a growing burden on local property taxpayers. These 3 realities are why this budget looks the way it does. And they are why the administrative team is bringing the full Building Stronger Together plan to the board on March 11th. To wrap up, here are the next steps. On the budget side, the full board is receiving the second draft budget this evening and determining its support for the board subcommittee's second draft recommendations, including a needed reduction in force. The third draft goes to the board on March 18th. Final budget for board approval on April 15th, annual budget meeting on May 13th, and town referendum on June 9th. Looking ahead, on March 11th, the administrative team will present Building Stronger Together, positioning RSU 38 for the future. That plan will address the full scope of the 3 converging realities we discussed tonight: enrollment, facilities, and funding, and outline a 1-year action step with pathways forward. The budget decisions you've seen tonight are the first steps in aligning our resources with our enrollment reality. The March 11 plan provides the broader strategic context. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the students of RSU 38. I'm happy to take questions on the budget, and I look forward to presenting the full Building Stronger Together plan on March 11th.
All right. Discussion? People, I know it's a lot of information at once. I know Karen sent us a lot of information yesterday. So a lot of work's been done, a lot to process, so.
I'm curious as to
Yep,
why
go ahead.
summer school was added back in, because that was one of the first things taken out, and then it was added back in at a lower, more focused cost. Just curious how that came to fruition.
Yeah, so after the first draft budget, there was a lot of conversation. The administrative team met quite extensively. Was receiving feedback from staff, and we decided that it was important to reinstate it, but maybe tighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, because it was low interest, was
yeah.
the reason why it was taken out before, so. I
And
wondered if-
coming up with other ways and ways that we can get students to attend and target the students that need to be there and so on and so forth.
Right, I saw Mr. Holman
Um,
next.
For the fund forward, we're at 3%, but it says 9% is statutory. Is there any risk or liability in that difference?
Mandy can explain the importance of the fund balance and what that means.
Well, I understand that the question is like, instead it was statutory to have 9, we're at 3. Are we at risk in some
So
way?
it's statutory to not go over the 9 without giving those funds back or being at risk of reducing our state subsidy.
I misunderstood.
Yes, so it's the other way around. I mean, you can have no fund balance if you choose to. I wouldn't recommend it, but you're not supposed to go over the 9. Years ago, it was set at 3%. During COVID, they upped it to, or just before COVID, they upped it to 5%. And then when COVID really hit, they upped it to 9%. And it was due to go back to 5%. And last year, they actually voted to keep it at 9%, realizing that, schools need that fund balance in case you have a catastrophic event.
That makes sense. I just was thinking the other way. It's like, another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
For the middle school foreign language teacher, I know it says an unfilled position, but that class is being taught now. I don't know if it's to Mike, whoever, but so would that mean starting next year, if we go with this, that 2/3 of the middle school students get foreign language, or they change it as a rotation? What would happen in terms of foreign language coverage in this scenario?
So I think that's an excellent question, and it's premature to answer that. The principals have been communicating with the world language staff and having conversations, and there will be some planning with the world language departments on what that might look like. So obviously, with going from 6 to 5 full-time staff, they'll have to make some adjustments, but to look at that as an opportunity to rethink and reimagine the world language. And so we will have that information as soon as we can process what that might look like, but it will take some time to determine exactly.
Thank you.
Chip?
How do we come up with Fayette's share?
So the state determines what our tuition rates are for certain grade levels. We get that information annually. And then we bill Fayette that tuition rate for all of their students that attend our school. So it's a different rate for middle school versus 9 to 12. Also, we take into consideration whether or not they have any students that receive special education services and what those services are. So we break it down into a daily rate, and we bill Fayette accordingly based on that, based on those services.
But the state's tuition set is not the true cost.
That's correct. They determine what our tuition rate is, and that's the max that we can bill them. The state determines that.
Okay, because if everyone noticed what the cost per student was for the towns, Fayette, on average, all of our towns pay close to $17,000 per student. Fayette pays $14,000. That's almost $300,000 difference. So they're getting a deal sending their kids here, but the actual residents of the school don't get that deal. And we're sure that you can't charge more than what they are.
I'm sure.
So they would be paying the same if they're like they're paying the same if they go to Mount Blue, like I've
Well,
lived in the-
well, tuition rate is set on what the ED 279 is, correct?
Yeah, the tuition rate is based off of our actual fund.
Right, and then,
Also, we can't, any student that goes to CATSE, we can't charge the full daily rate. We can only charge 2/3.
are they paying for the CATSE?
CATSE gets the subsidy for those, the difference in the subsidy for those students, so we can't charge Fayette for them.
And we're transporting.
Fayette has to pay,
I get it. It's-
yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got one more.
Yep,
Sure.
go ahead.
What goes into our capital reserve? What is the purpose for the capital reserve?
So last year was the first year we actually established the capital reserve at the end of FY '25. We put 400,000 in it, and we have 279 designated for 2 roofs that are being fixed, which will leave a balance in it. We plan on hopefully putting another 400,000 in this year. And again, Sean will determine, usually it's going to be roofs. Those are our big ticket items, so it's likely going to be roofs.
So the purpose of that reserve account is buildings
Yes, it's facilities. Yep,
specifically?
yep.
So we don't put a reserve account aside for any maintenance equipment,
Correct.
which that hits us hard when it comes up and we need mowers and side-by-sides and trucks and everything. I think we should probably investigate that a little bit more, because if we look at doing something along that lines of putting maybe smaller reserves accounts with specific purposes in it and fulfilling them, it actually hits the towns in micro hits over the course of the years, instead of all of a sudden we need $100,000 in new equipment. And to a $24 million budget, $100,000 is throwing a pebble in Maranacook Lake, but those kind of things do lower that burden year to year, because they're unrealized expenses, because all of a sudden, one year, a mower just has a catastrophic disaster, and for the grounds crew that probably understands it, when COVID hit, a zero turn went from about $15,000 to $25,000 in the course of 1 year. So having a reserve account kicking around for small things like that does help as well.
Pat, go ahead.
Going from 4 elementary school principals to 3, how is that going to work?
So we do have a retirement that we'll vote on
Abby.
tonight. So Abby Hartford is retiring, and we will come up with a plan on how we're doing that coverage, but we don't have the specific answers to that right now. On March 11th, when we present, we'll be giving more information around that and what it looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry in advance for not having pulled this from the presentation, but I'm dense. So our original budget was a 5.5% increase over the previous year to the tax burden, is that correct?
When we did the first draft
The first
budget
draft.
on the expenditure side.
Okay. And the second one, I saw the number 2.89. Is it actually coming in below the first draft, or is that a 2.89% increase over the first? Like, is our second budget actually a lower tax impact than the first, or is it still an increase?
So the first draft didn't take revenue into consideration because we didn't have the ED 279. So we were just showing you at that point what the increase to the expenditure side was, which was 5.5. We are now at, we've reduced that, and we are now at 2.89 on the expenditure side.
So ultimately, tax burden is still,
The tax burden is 6.75 across the 4 districts.
6.75% increase across the board.
Across, yes. And at the first draft, we were at 11.99,
Okay, got it.
once we factored in the revenue side, the ED 279 information.
Got it. Thank you.
Anyone who hasn't?
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
Dan, go ahead.
I don't expect you to have this number on your head, Karen, but with the drop in number of students, what number do we have? What sense do we have? How many students within district are going to charter schools or homeschooling or otherwise not accessing public school when they might have otherwise? Those numbers, well, charter schools weren't around that long ago, and the homeschooling increased with COVID, and that continues to be there. What is your sense of the numbers and other potential student losses we might have that are not on the full list?
So that's a great question, and I did do research on the capture rate from our birth rates. And so I was able to access that information. I first was going to the annual reports from the towns where they have to report out the birth rates each year, but I wasn't getting all the information, so I was able to access that through asking the state. And then, so you look at what the birth rates are and then what the capture rates are when they enter pre-K kindergarten. And we were up many years, like 140% capture rate, which means that more students were attending when it came to kindergarten. We were drawing in more students than what the birth rate was for that cohort. And so, but as of late, that rate has decreased quite a bit. And so I think there's just not the numbers is one answer. But I think you raise a great point. Are there other students that are not coming because of the, reasons that you suggested? And that would take a lot of research and, multiple avenues to try to get that information, to find out where and if there are students out there that are residents that are attending.
That capture would capture the kindergarten or incoming pre-K. First of all, that's interesting data. I think, and I'm just thinking aloud here, I think the principals would have a pretty good idea within how many, like, oh, they weren't coming here and they started homeschooling, they started going to charter, and that would happen typically not the early grades, later grades. As a teacher, we certainly knew of, oh, these kids were here and now they're there, homeschooled or chartered, and some sense of numbers there. I used to know, but not this year, the fraction of Fayette students that are going here versus other schools, has that been holding fairly steady? Do you know?
So I think you're asking if Fayette students are going to other schools rather than coming to Marinика?
We typically have the significant majority of them.
I think we still
I didn't know if
do.
that number is changing in any way or not.
I think we still do have that majority number, but Fayette is also experiencing a decline
Yeah,
in their school-age population. So, so those Fayette numbers are going down for us as well.
yeah. I thought, not disputing the demographics, that the numbers are down. And we got to deal with the budget right now, which is a right now thing. It's my thought, as experienced someone as a teacher and just prior to being a teacher, that if we're losing a customer per se, a student, outreach to them matters. And I wonder, long-term as a district, we have been a magnet over time, and that's been something that I think we have reason to be proud of. But further outreach for any child who is being homeschooled or charter school, just reaching out, that listening and being open is, I think that matters in any sort of operation. When COVID happened, team hours on, we had 8 students who were going to stay in homeschool during it. We reached out and 6 of them ended coming in or doing half-time and later full-time. And those 6, all the parents responded that just being listened to and hearing the concern and knowing that it didn't have to be all or nothing made a difference. And from 8 getting back to 6 is a pretty huge change. That took time. It really was a listening operation and saying we're flexible and we want to know your concerns. So I'm just thinking the long term, and this is more, we're going to deal with the budget now, but leaning into our strengths and being good listeners and reaching out is something I hope we can do.
Thank you, because I was thinking the exact same thing, and I think it's really important to give those people a voice, whether we want to hear it or not, because it could be a hard thing to hear. But I do think those people pay taxes, and I think it's important to give them a voice. And I think I'm the chair of the communications committee. I don't know if that's something we can work on moving forward. Again, it might be hard to hear, but it's data, and, you know, everybody may not have the same reason. But if we are losing students, I think it's important to know why. So thank you for saying that, Dan. I appreciate it.
And I can have the actual homeschool number of students available. I will make sure you have that information so that you have an understanding of how many numbers we're actually talking about.
Thank you. It's just, we live in a competitive world.
Mr. Tubak?
Do you, what communities in Maine are growing? Where are the students at Southern Maine, you know, like York County, are there loads of kids in those schools? And it's just, as we get further north, we see less or fewer and fewer students. Just curious about those demographics, just to follow up. Or if nobody knows, it's fine, I was just curious. This is a statewide thing, like there are fewer and fewer students in Maine as we head towards, in 2035, being a Class S school for sports is gonna be, you know, strange at 800 total kids. I mean, forecasting that out, it's like $37,000 per kid. Budget's gonna be millions and millions of dollars more just at standard 3% inflationary numbers. So there's some 10-year realities that'll be here very quickly that we have to know about now. And just to Chip's point on the facility side, I think what the budget ask was is about $1 million a year. So they'll get about 200,000, maybe 400,000 total. Most of that goes to critical stuff, like if the roof leaks, you get mold, you don't have school. If the boiler doesn't work, you don't have school. So to get past those things and then get down into something where it's kind of a nice to do, it's almost a bridge too far, unfortunately, because we had some good designs on this, and then the ED 279 kind of sunk that a little bit. We're looking at 2 buses because we can get a $50,000 grant per bus right now. So by not getting another bus, we leave $50,000 on the table. I was pushing to get 3 buses because then we basically buy 3, get 1 free kind of, you know, but this is the financial reality you're at because we're looking at reducing personnel. It seems pretty crude on our part to say, well, let's just get a bunch of buses instead. So yeah, this is go time. This is the hard decisions. Those are really good questions. I'm glad you're asking.
To answer your question, Brian, like I saw an article, I shared it with Karen, like it's kind of interesting, like I was looking at some of the data, because like Brunswick like I would be thinking this anecdotally, like Brunswick would be increasing, but there's still less kids, like they're cutting in that district. I have a friend on the school board there and cutting teachers because of population decline, or student decline, not necessarily, but student decline. So it's kind of interesting, and the statewide data is available. I think we can get that. It's on the, yeah, I can share it. Listen, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask a question about where Chip was at. Does our fund balance, is that able to help us in a situation like what Chip talked about, where it wasn't part of our plan, but we do have some reserve funding, the rainy day, that's just not planned, but it's there to help us in emergent situations, which is emergent versus capital investment, which is supposed to be planned. Plan for being ahead of emergent. So is that able to be used in Chip's scenario?
Yeah, so that's kind of the point of keeping a fund balance, is so if, you know, for some reason a boiler went out, if we don't have the funds in a capital reserve, because again, we just established a capital reserve. We didn't have a capital reserve the entire time the district has been a school district. This is new to us.
Well pump just went in the fall.
Yeah, and
Right.
so that is what the fund reserve could be used for. The difference being is it takes a different type of vote to then allocate those funds, whereas the capital reserve, you voted for it at referendum, so we don't have to get another vote to go ahead and do those capital improvements,
So is the
if that
vote-
makes
Is
sense.
the vote a board vote, or is it a?
I believe it's a referendum vote, but I've never had to do it, so I'd have to honestly get you that information as to what the process is. But I do know that there's a bigger process to use those funds for something like that.
I wasn't also, I may have just missed, but I know we talked about it in committee, that we already used some of those funds to help lower that transfer burden. So when we didn't see that go 1-for-1 in the 675, loss that we got in the ED 279, and then the transfer to town, which was like 250. There's something there, but we took, I wasn't sure where it was called out, but we used some of that fund balance to move over and compensate for a reduction in some of that local
Yes.
return, correct?
So
I just want
last,
to make sure it gets called out. So.
yeah, so last year we used 792,656, I believe it is, towards fund balance. And this year we're requesting 984. So we increased the flat fund balance, we increased by 200,000. The additional amount is the amount that we get for homeschool students, or superintendent's agreement, sorry. Superintendent's agreements, we get an adjustment for that. And so that's why it's a weird number. It's not an even number. Like the 92,656 was the amount we got the previous year, and we got 189 that we'll be using for next year. And then you have the 700,000 and the 900,000. Does that make sense?
David?
Yeah, looking at the projections, you know, the next 10 years for Wayne and Mount Vernon, and we're talking roofs, we're talking boilers and all this stuff. Have we looked at numbers, what it would save this district realistically if we're talking like Mount Vernon, 44 kids, you know, shutting them down? What do we look at savings then, you know? Does anybody know that?
Well, I mean, we don't have those figures right off. It would take a minute to put all that together.
Right.
But I believe on the March 11th, we're going to set the stage to plan for strategic planning. And I think that those questions should be addressed through the strategic planning process, where we have a wide audience of stakeholders that are contributing to this conversation, and then we're doing the work to gather that data to bring to the strategic planning committee.
Sounds like we're headed towards that, unfortunately.
David, you have anything else? Okay, good, okay. Leslie, then.
But it was worth noting that in committee, we talked about a very broad range of possibilities, and the understanding that to close a school still takes 2 years, so that doesn't solve us in our immediate. So we talked a lot about what our immediate sort of most dire things that we could do, or what was even possible, in addition to that. And again, not stating the 2-year, just so we can keep that out in the open, as David asked the question, bring it out in the open, like, let's put as many of these things in the open as we can. But also, even when you look at Wayne, there's possible stipulation if that were to close, that it's not an asset we just return on. There may be other details of that means that we don't get return on that asset. So like, there's a lot more stuff in the weeds of all of this that everybody will have to become very aware of as we keep moving our way down. We won't be able to speak very vaguely for a lot longer. We have to really start to dive into this, and I believe that the strategic planning stuff will be able to get us there. But it's very important for folks to start to understand, you know, because as we sat and did back of the napkin math, in just a few years, we lose almost an entire grade out of the middle school in number of students. In 3 years, we'll be down 84 students, and the small class right now in the middle school is 94 students. So we will lose almost a whole grade. So like, that's just a bite, that's just a small little piece of this big picture. But as far as folks understanding, like, you can track this stuff moving around, and Karen's and Vandy have done a ton of work to bring a lot of information forward that helps us see where we've come from and where we're headed. But like, that starts to be huge to say, well, then where does the train of thought go? Then what capacity does the middle school have? Can it take on 5th grade? Like, you just start to let it breathe and flex and see where the opportunities come from. And that administrative team I knew already did a lot of this work to say, if you built RSU 38 all over again, you know, and didn't box ourselves in, what would you do? What would you do if you really had to think very critically about this? Because we're in a very critical situation. we aren't gonna get a new school built anytime soon. We can't close schools inside of 2 years, right? So like, that's just how quickly it sort of all boxes back up into a spot. But we have 1 year in front of us of a budget that either our community can pay for or our community cannot pay for. And the last place we want to be when we get there is a budget that does not pass at vote, and we are not headed into the school year with a planned approach to what we need to do. That'll be the absolute worst place for us to be as a district, and we will not have steered things well if that's where we end up.
Chip, and then,
I just have a few things, and when you look at forecasting, you need to look at your housing market. The housing market in the RSU is down over on average like 30%. So that means that people that move here have kids, they go to school, they graduate, and they stay. Your population is going to be an ebb and flow. When they leave, generally speaking, new families come in and it goes up and down. Is it possible to break down that budget by school? Because I think what we're going to start to see, and to the point I think everybody's getting at, is it's sustainable to keep schools open. When you have a community that is paying less than what the school operation is for that school, I think it starts to show the reasoning behind why certain schools may not be viable option at this time. Because I think, what did we say? There was 44 kids, and if the town looked at what they paid for that school, because as I assume it is, everybody's tax, when the budget goes out, this is everybody paying in for the same budget. This isn't Manchester paying for Manchester Elementary School and then part of the as part of the middle school and high school and so on and so forth. But I think that might start to show that maybe the smaller communities in the RSU are getting a really good deal, because to keep a school open, you need to staff it, you need to heat it, you got to maintain it, you got to bus kids there. And when you have a small population, that cost per child starts to increase. And if you start looking at what each town in the RSU starts putting into this budget, you might see that it's a little bit skewed in some areas. And it might force that conversation to come up. And I think, yeah. Oh, and the GPA, this is great discussion, but hold on, because as probably Sean will tell you, this comes up every year because the southern cities and towns don't get what we get up here. Holistically speaking, as a general thing, every year they put in legislation to mandate certain funding goes to, it's a low level. Nobody can get zero. Everybody gets a certain amount no matter what, and then it goes up and down. So what that means is if that goes, there's still only like $1.6 billion to go amongst all the schools. And when you start watering that down, our number is going to start going down as well. So that's why when I talked about capital reserves and stuff like that, a lot of places that I deal with and I've worked with, their capital reserves have goals of how much they're going to put into it, and they have purposes that go into it. So you can't just say, this is a capital reserve to pay for expenses that come up on, facilities, and then go, oh, wait, we blew the engine in a bus and we need to repair that, and it comes up. These all have a wide, and what it does is it does level that spike and valley to a more smooth, transition from year to year. But just like I said, thinking ahead, sooner or later, the general purpose aid formula is going to change. It's getting a lot of backing, more and more in the news. So we might be in a worse deficit in the next 5 years with student population going down and funding falling. So
it's a good thing to flag. David?
My first thing is that I'm looking forward to the next meeting where we get the fuller presentation, and I am almost excited and trusting because what I've heard and seen in action is that our administrative team, our superintendent, are focusing on making sure the children get the best we can give them. And that may mean many adjustments, and we'll have to take into account all the other things, but that is the major focus. And so that's what I'm counting on, even though we have these cuts that basically the state has forced us on us. So I am really looking forward to that, and I think that we are going to be glad to go forward with the budget as it's presented. On the details of which teacher and which position, I'm accepting that we need to have our experts, our administrative team, in conjunction with the educators, with the staff, with the counselors, everybody, and the maintenance, to help us figure out how to do it. But at the same time, I am very strongly aligned with that view that we need to have the students and do everything we can to make sure that this is not cutting their performance, not cutting what we're putting in to enable that. And I think our team will be able to do that. On the other things, on the projections for our growth or decline, I think it looks like a very good amount of good research and good predictions. I don't think, sort of as I think you alluded to, that it can take into account growth in the state that may occur here or elsewhere, but we're not seeing it right now. So we have to go with what information we have. But I just hope that in our planning, we don't shut out the fact that things may change in a different direction and that we need to be ready to manage that too. And to me, the question on closing schools, as you indicated, there's a whole bunch of details to that, not just the finances, but this has been talked about for the last 40 years and brought up a number of times, and the communities need to approve of closing schools, and they have never done that yet. On the cost paid by each community, you look at Wayne, the smallest, but you look at the amount they pay per student, significantly higher than most of the other communities. So how much each, needs, as you were saying, needs to be evaluated carefully. Related to small schools, a couple of things. Historically, there was a schoolhouse in practically every community, not the bigger towns in every community. There was one down the street from my house. There was, and so on. We can't go back to that, but we already have direct feedback, a couple of us on the board, of parents that have not enrolled their students in our pre-K because it's not a reasonable distance for them. And we need to know, as most of us know, as parents, the younger the children are, the more protective we are, and the more we need to be ready to be in close touch with them. So sending them a distance is an issue and has been in the past. We may be able to get beyond that, and I think our strategic planning needs to look at these things. But there's going to be a lot of factors that we have to consider, and the fact that we've already lost some students on a lower level because of consolidation needs to be kept in mind. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, David. Is there anyone that hasn't talked yet that, I just want to let everybody weigh in? So we're getting some multiples.
Did Chad raise his hand?
Chad, did you, oh, I thought you had your hand up.
I
Just-
thought you did too.
All right,
Yeah, I thought you did.
Go ahead.
I thought you raised your hand, Chad.
A couple of small informational questions.
Yep.
I wanted to proceed it with a suggested point of order. It seems to me like we're sort of veering into a strategic discussion right now. And to me, it seems like before we bring up things like school closings, that I know we all have strong opinions about, and lots of us have lots to say, that would be better done at the next meeting than specifically about strategic planning. Well, I believe this meeting is specifically about the budget we're looking at right now. And it might be expeditious to limit our comments to the budget we're looking at right now. So that's, feel free to contradict me if I'm wrong.
No,
Chair Roderick.
fair enough, but
That's
we've given us a little bit of latitude.
sure, my opinion only.
Yeah, no.
A couple of small points. One, just to Brian's earlier comment, Portland also got hit with a loss of enrollment. So as far as I can tell, it's almost everywhere. Questions. What is do we know, and I understand if you don't have this handy, but do we know the current per counselor load for the elementary school counselors that are getting reduced to position, what the current load is and what it would be?
I
like
can't
caseload?
hear you,
The
sorry.
load of the elementary school counselors, the current load, and what would it be under this plan? Like,
And
what's
I
the
understand
current-
if you don't have that now. That's
Yeah,
just,
so I mean, I think if you were look kind of broad brush strokes, if you're reducing from 3 full-time counselors to 2 full-time counselors at the elementary level, and you take the total population of the elementary level and divide it by 4, divided by 3, you know, their caseloads per se will increase. I think that's a fair statement.
yes, I guess I would just, right, I'm just curious about,
Yeah.
and if, I would love to see numbers at some point.
Like, what are the
How many
numbers?
students they're actively serving.
And I think
guess, 'cause
it
that's-
varies too within their roles. Sometimes they do push in services for whole class. Sometimes they do pull out small groups. Sometimes they do one-on-one. And so their role can vary and their intensity of the services that they offer for students. So I think that's also important to differentiate as well.
Certainly, yeah, I'm just interested in the sort of what their, basically how manageable their load is now, and then what will be impacted beyond that. And I have a couple other small, quick ones. I think this is again for Brian. $50,000 per year that was mentioned for buses. Is that a this year only, or because I know there's some discussion of retooling the state funding, like if we had more money next year, could we buy the buses next year and still get that 50K, or is that a 1 year only deal?
It's a 1 year right now. There could be other opportunities down the road like that. We will continue to, still through the state subsidy program for buses, you put in your applications. And so we'll continue to do that every year for a minimum of 1 bus each year, so that we're making sure that we're rotating in once the life of a bus, expires, that we have that new bus coming in. And Jason is very well adept at managing that. So, yeah.
Awesome. And just the last one was for the reduction in the elementary principals from 4 to 3. My understanding was that the addition of a 4th one was a relatively recent creation of that position.
Correct.
And I'd heard that there'd been good feedback on it, and so I was sort of curious what the original rationale for the creation was and what that feedback was, I guess.
So it was during COVID. I would say, the majority of the impetus behind that was COVID. And it was through soft money COVID that funded the position too. And then it ended up coming into our general budget. And here we are.
The money came from COVID. Was the need considered COVID-based as well?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I think Leslie was next.
Yeah, no, this has to do with what you were saying. The guidance counselor, that was an addition too with COVID fund.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, that's what I'm asking. She said the principal, but also, you were asking about the guidance. Yes, so pre-COVID, We added this one after COVID with grant funds, and then we ended up keeping the positions. Same with the principal, to clarify for you.
Thank
So we were operating before with that many guidance
With that
counselors.
many, we added
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Leslie?
So I just wanted to add that some of the comments tonight, this is the first night we've rolled out more information, more details about where we've sat with, details have come in about our funding to us, insurances, our expenditures, projections around enrollment. And I've been thankful Chair Roderick has allowed some latitude in conversation, and I respect what Andrew has had to say. But as any of the public is hearing some of this for the first time and start to have their wheels turn, I thought that from my time in the committee, as well as sitting here and wanting it to be really clear for the public, and we talk about things as soon as possible. I think we've got some snowbanks up on the conversation, but it's worth noting, like, this is how broad the conversation was in committee. And so it wasn't without accepting and noting and being curious and leaning into experiences that we've already had that have been very difficult and that were unexpected, and that we actually gleaned really great learnings from some of the unfortunate things that we've already had to experience as a community, as a district. And that from those learnings, that's been a part of where the A-team and the budget committee has been able to churn up and cultivate the ideas around what other changes and bad, that from change that can be unplanned, some good things can still come and some new ideas. And then having had the ability and opportunity, what feels unfortunate to have had some opportunity, ends up feeling like very fortunate opportunity to have been able to figure out what we are capable of and what we can adapt to and what we can find has grown very successfully. And now in what other ways might that be able to live, right? So we don't still have all the details. We were never gonna have all the details today. I think the conversation, for me, I wanted to make sure I just added in, the conversation in committee was very broad. Like, we didn't put any boundaries on what we were willing to talk about, willing to know we might have to put on the table. And one thing I think we're very in violent agreement, is a funny statement that gets used, is that we have to start talking about it very, very soon. And we have to get the community is well aware of the different levels of action that we have researched that we may have to take, so that we can all get around what that might have to look like. Because there is no, we're gonna get more money like any year in the near future, like it's just not gonna happen, and students aren't gonna influx all of a sudden. So like, we're at the beginning of understanding what other guidelines or statutes or things that tie our hands from being able to do everything exactly as we want, when we wanna do it, and start to fall in with strategic planning, to figuring out when are we able to do certain things, should we choose to do them. Should we find out it will be what works best? Should we find out this is what living in our means looks like? And this is the best opportunity we can give students based on all of that information. So that's what was shared in community. That's the work that's been gone on behind the scenes. And it was important to talk about it now so that folks don't over-speculate and understand, or over-speculate even the motives of the comments and stuff that we've talked about tonight. It's important to me to say that out loud.
Thank you. David?
I don't think, I think in board work, and well, I'm counting on the AT to deal with, as I said before, the student support. And that includes, I have a different perspective on the fourth principle, but I'm still trusting the A-team to be able to make it so it's a good working thing as to go down to 3, rather than getting into discussing it. I'm looking forward to it, but that is very important to me, and I expect it'll happen. I'm good.
All right. Dave, Brian, sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
mean to say
call me
Dave.
whatever you want.
Call him Chad.
I think at the end of the day is this budget that we think that constituents in our town that we represent who can't be here, don't want to be here tonight, will vote for. I think at the end of the day, that's all it is. The outlier appears to me to be plainly Mount Vernon. I don't know if they're gonna have the appetite or we're going to be able to adequately explain to everybody why they're paying so much more than everybody else. And I think that's the question that as a school board, we're gonna have to explain to our friends in Mount Vernon and the other communities. So, but if this looks like a budget that's tolerable, then I think we can advance to the next step. And it sounds to me like it seems tolerable. The other thing we said to Leslie's earlier point was that we're not keen to sit here. I'm not keen to sit here at another meeting and just say, well, that teacher's going to go, that teacher. That we're relying on Karen to direct her personnel to come up with a plan that reduces the tax burden, which they've done, which keeps the board out of it, which is important because we're not close to the students. We're not close to the administration. That's not our job. And I'm pleased to see what they brought back, a 2.89% increase over last year. It's remarkably small. There's a lot of creativity in this. A lot of things took hits that we did not want to take hits. And yet, I think it's going to still be difficult for some folks to say, that's a lot. So the communications piece is going to be the paramount element here going forward. But I do want to express my appreciation for all the work that's been done so far, both Leslie is saying behind the scenes at committee level, and certainly I know Karen and her folks have been really working hard to try to look out for students, and also they understand the importance of the politics of this and getting it over the end zone. So it's good work all around.
I agree. So thanks for saying that. I think that's where we're at right now is do we want, I mean, it's our job. We're the ones that vote to send this. Like, we rely on the 18 and, you know, the superintendent to give us guidance on where to go, but are we kind of at the point now where are we good with the dollar amount we're at, or do we want folks to look a little deeper and see what else might be out there? That's the guidance they all, like Karen needs to move, no, Dr. Smith needs to move forward and guide the team with the team. So are folks okay with where we're at? Look to the details. I mean, I'm not saying you're gonna be okay to vote for it, but are we okay going for, yeah, do we want to move forward? Because that's the guidance they need.
To start fleshing out.
To start fleshing out details.
So does this need a motion? or-
No. It's kind of it's a feel out, so that's, I mean, people have kind of given a lot of opinion, and I probably have a lot of opinion too, but I'm gonna leave that at the door for tonight, because the guidance is where are we moving forward? Like, are we okay with this number? I mean, I'm not saying I'm asking anyone to vote, but is there more, or do we want to put details to this plan?
The only thing that I would suggest, because I still don't understand it, I do understand it, but I don't, let me put it that way. And I don't want to harp on our neighbors in Fayette about this, but the tuition rate for 25-26 for high school, this is 9 through 12, was $14,042. K through 8 was $15,000. And they're supposed to be paying for their special education costs. They're only paying $14,092 per student. I still don't know how that is possible. Also, I do believe that they do get a deal here because they're part of that school funding. I don't believe, the ED 279, I don't believe takes into like the RSO officer, the school resource officer. There's a bunch of things, and that's generally what the school, the residents, the sending school board can approve to pay more. And I think it would be behooving upon us to go to them and say, look, everybody else is paying this really large increase, and you're paying $50 over the tuition rate. I mean, I don't want to price them out of coming here because there's a lot of great students that come out of Fayette, but I do think that's a piece we should be looking at, because if the other communities are paying more to bring those students in here, that's a negative impact, not financially negative impact. But the students, I know, a few of them that are really great, but I think that's a piece that we should really look into and maybe go back to their school board and say, we would like a little bit more. And they can vote to pay more. Pretty sure. I'll leave it up to you, Mandy, to make sure.
Thanks.
I'm pretty sure they can pay. If they vote, the sending school votes to pay more.
Anything else along the lines of any information folks need? Want? I know there was some requests. Pat, go ahead.
There's a possibility of getting another half-time therapist through the high school, the health center. Has that been considered to see other kids, elementary kids?
KDH.
I don't know what someone's gonna have to.
Pre-K through,
Yeah,
Well done.
we can talk to Sarah Morrow. That was brought up at, as you're aware, at the committee meeting, the last committee meeting, as, looking at more behavioral health services at the elementary level.
would that help pick up some of that counseling?
I mean, it's not apples to apples, but it certainly can fill a need. Yeah.
Those are two different positions, the guidance counselor.
Correct,
And then we
that's
have
what I said.
outside
Yeah.
counselors that we're
Yeah.
able to get.
Yes.
Now, though, we don't pay those, the kind of behavior, that's billed through.
She's just asking if just additional student supports, not
Okay.
really about the funding part, just.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to understand exactly how that works too.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for all your work. I know I've been on a lot of phone calls with Dr. Smith about this, and so I know there's a lot of work going in that probably none of us know, so. Really appreciate it. If people have questions in the meantime, please try to get those over before the board meeting so we can have answers and all of that, so. We will move along with this discussion. Now we have citizens' comments related to the budget. If there's anyone here that would like to speak, they can step up. Is there anyone online? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's gonna take me a little while.
You'll be fine.
Citizens' comment, yep, so no one, all right, we're gonna move along.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I just had one question and then one comment. The strategic planning meeting on March 11th, am I correct in saying that you all are formulating that plan like now and up until that time, and then that's the time that you're gonna be sharing that? Or is that really kind of a working meeting?
Yes, so we'll have a presentation on a kind of a plan to plan and an outline for strategic planning with actual timeline and steps of what that would look like.
Great, thank you. And then my comment, which I hope I'm just pointing out the obvious here, but as you guys, knowing that you're having those conversations between now and then, I just want to add in my food for thought. I'm a Wayne parent. I absolutely recognize that these conversations are going to happen in regards to Wayne and Mount Vernon. I, of course, have feelings about that, but I'm also a realist. We understand that there's a lot at stake, and I don't envy the work that you guys have done or need to do, and I appreciate all that goes into it. I just want to make sure that if those conversations proceed to how do we close these schools, that we run them as open schools optimally until the day they need to close. And I assume that that is obvious, but I just needed to say that out loud. Thanks.
What was your name, just for the record? Emily. Yeah, thank you. All right, anybody else? Okay, perfect. All right. Next up, we have action items and retirement of Manchester Elementary School Principal Abby Hartford.
I make a motion to accept the retirement of Manchester Elementary School Principal Abby Hartford, effective June 2026, and commend her for her service.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? I think it's unanimous, yeah. That's it. Thank you. Okay, accept the resignation of high school mathematics teacher Tanya Hunt, effective June 2026. You have a motion?
To accept the resignation of high school mathematics teacher Tanya Hunt, effective June 2026.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Oh, okay. All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All right, unanimous. All right, next. Executive session to consider negotiations between RSU 38 Board of Directors and the Maranacook Area School Support Staff Association pursuant to MRSA 405D. All right, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, moved in second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, motion to adjourn? Okay.
All right.